Class, for the week 5 class session, I'm going to start off by walking you guys through the writing process for assignment 2, which is due this Sunday. And that'll be the first 2 parts with these videos. And then the last video for this class session, I'm going to introduce us to our 3rd book in the class, which is our fictional novel, My Name is Asherlev by Chaim Potok. And that is the novel that we will write assignment 3 on, which is the last one for this course. So to start off, I just want to give a quick review of the main criteria of assignment 2, which is due Sunday. This assignment is worth 15% of your course grade, so it's the second highest scored assignment in the course, so you definitely want to do well on it. The paper should be at least 1,000 words, which is roughly 3, maybe 4 pages. For all the criteria, you can see pages 11 through 12 in the syllabus. Now, 3 sources are required for this paper, and the Book of Ruth can count as one of your sources. So what I'm saying is you should definitely then use either the Bayless article, the Raskus article, or your library source as 2 of those other sources. All right, if you want to see a sample paper to get your mind around what this essay should look like, if you go to our course page and scroll down to where it says course resources, you can then click here where it says assignment 2 sample essay, and you can see an example of an essay that a former student wrote in this course to help you see what I'm looking for, and the student did well on this assignment. All right, so let's get into the writing steps for this assignment. So hopefully you remember the conflict that you settled on from last week. So that's going to be your starting point. And tonight I'm going to walk you through the remaining steps of basically how to find examples in the Book of Ruth, how to use your sources, your significance, and I'll end with how to outline your paper. Okay? All right, so step 3, find your examples in the Book of Ruth. Thinking of your central conflict, try to come up with 2 to 3 places in the Book of Ruth where you believe this conflict is demonstrated. It can be demonstrated through actions of the characters. It can be demonstrated through things that they say, maybe even things that the narrator of the story says. So really you can use anything to prove this. The second step would also be to list out the characters involved in this conflict. God can be one of the characters, or the whole nation of Israel as a whole can be a character. And you should ask yourself these 3 questions. What is each person's role, position in the conflict? Maybe who has the power position and upper hand position versus who has the weaker position. What is their response in the conflict? How does each side respond? And what do they want as a resolution? Now, for some of the characters, that may be the same thing. It may be a different difference between the 2. Okay, so you don't have to directly state these questions or answers in your paper, but the reader should be able to infer these responses. So what I want you to do is pause the video and go ahead and complete this step in your worksheet. So list 2 to 3 places in the Book of Ruth. If you can, provide chapter and verse, or at least summarize the section right here. And then if each place kind of you feel needs to have its own response to these 3 questions, then you can go ahead and do fill this out for each place. But if it's if both of all your textual response maybe kind of comes from one big section in the book, then you may just need to fill this out once. So I'll kind of leave that up to you. All right, so pause this video and then come back. Step number 4. Now you're going to pull in the other sources that you read. So that would be your Bayless article, maybe your Raskus article, or the library source that you found last week for the discussion forum. Okay, so what you need to do is now try to find out, can either of these 3 sources help you explain those places in the Book of Ruth? Can you use them as evidence and support to help you prove that you are right in identifying this as the main conflict in the Book of Ruth? Okay, so a couple things to check. Make sure you use at least 1 to 2 sources for each place in Ruth. That's kind of a good benchmark. And then make sure you've used at least 3 out of the 4 sources. So that means at least 2 of these sources. You need to have used at least 2 out of Baylis, Raskus, or your library source. Okay, so the Book of Ruth can count as your third source in your paper. So go ahead and complete this section of the worksheet. So basically what you're doing here is the source I plan to use for my first place in Ruth. So you'd be referring back to up here in step 3, maybe the first verse you used or section of the story, and then state whether you think Baylis, Raskus, or your library source will help you prove the conflict in this section. However that may support you. Maybe it's digging into the original Hebrew terms or providing cultural context, whatever it is that you want to use. And then just explain how the source will help you down here. You can provide some of the evidence or ideas you get from the source, or even a quote. And if you have more than one section of a source or more than one source to help prove this place in the text, then you can provide it. Kind of just type your notes here. Okay, this is just meant as a guide to help you see what I want. All right, so you should be able to have some evidence for each place. That's ideal. If you are lacking in one place, but you have your own insights to offer, that could be okay. Just make sure, again, that you do use at least 2 of your articles, Baylis, Raskus, and the library source. And then lastly, I do offer a place if you do have critical information that you think is really important, but it doesn't fall into maybe one of the places you mentioned very clearly, you could still list it out here. It might help you later on in your paper, or you can incorporate it somewhere else, maybe in the conclusion or the introduction or somewhere. All right, so complete these sections and then come back and I'll cover the last couple steps. Step number 5, this is your discover your what of it, or in other words, you can just say, so what? A good literary analysis paper is always going to explain why should the reader care about the central conflict, okay? So think of phrasing it this way: is this theme true? Can I see this theme in the real world? Is the Book of Ruth offering a real world solution? Okay, so you might be initially thinking, well, that's kind of hard to do. How on earth can I make what this thousands of year old book is talking about relevant to today? So here's some questions to help you with that. How does knowing about this conflict help you? Maybe you learned something by studying this conflict. What have I learned about this conflict from this book? How do I think this lesson could be applied to the larger world? Or what solution is the Book of Ruth offering to the world? Okay. So tip, you can use your sources in your paper to help prove your what of it in the essay. So that is an option as well. And then if you need an example of what does a what of it paragraph look like, or how would you address that in your paper, if you look at the last paragraph in the summary section of Baylis's article, that's an excellent explanation and example of what a what of it paragraph looks like. So go ahead and pause this video and try to come up with your what of it statement in the worksheet. All right, the last step, which is outlining, and you'll probably work on this more this weekend, but your paper should have 3 clear sections to it. You should have an introduction paragraph that introduces the Book of Ruth and your central conflict, and this might be a good place in your paper to provide a short summary of the Book of Ruth and the conflict and how this conflict plays out in the book. All right, but make sure to still keep your paragraph at I would say a good introduction paragraph is around half a page long, okay? Don't let your summary get too carried away. Make sure the summary is focused around your conflict, okay? So you don't need every single detail about the story of Ruth, just the ones that are most important to understanding the conflict of how you're seeing it in the book. All right, your body paragraph should have at least 3 paragraphs, possibly even more to reach 3 to 4 pages. And you should organize these body paragraphs of your paper by your reasons for saying this conflict exists, or chronologically by what happens in the plot, depending what your conflict is and how you want to approach it. Okay, so tips for writing the body paragraph. You should probably have more than 3 paragraphs, like I said, to reach the full 3 to 4 pages. Mix up between summarizing and quoting, and use the Graf and Birkenstein templates to help you. And then focus by organizing by ideas, not by sources. That means I should not read your paper and be like, oh, here's everything you found on the Bayless source that was relevant. Here's everything on the Raskus source that was relevant. And then here's everything from your library source that was relevant. That is not how you should organize a research paper. You need to be in control of the ideas, okay? So you can even mix and match sources within your paragraphs. You can have Bayless and Raskus in one paragraph and your library source and Bayless in another paragraph, okay? So your conclusion, this would be a great place to put your what of it in detail to explain why is understanding this conflict significant and important to your reader. Okay, now I have made an outline document like I did for the first essay. This one's a little more in detail and might help you. So some writers love outlines. If that's you, you will probably like this. If you don't like outlines, at least look at the outline document. So you get a sense of what needs to be addressed in your paper and maybe use it as a checklist. So after you've gone through and written your paper, maybe make sure, oh, do I have a clear topic sentence? Do I mention the Book of Ruth in my introduction? You can use this outline in that way. So to find the outline, go back under Course Resources and then go to Assignment 2 Outline. And each page in this outline represents a paragraph. So this first page here is your introduction paragraph and asks you questions and prompts you for information, which you would then write out in sentences. And the goal is that you can copy and paste these different sentences together to form the paragraph that's your introduction. And there's also a little checklist here, again, to help you make sure you have everything you need in that paragraph. All right, for a body paragraph, I kind of follow the meal plan, which is that you give a topic sentence, you give your evidence, you explain your evidence. So think of that picture activity where we had to explain the relationship between the hand sanitizer, granola bars, and the candle. That's what analysis is. And then link. This is where you explain how your evidence and analysis connects back to your thesis that you wrote, or in this case, your main conflict in the Book of Ruth. Okay, so I give you 3 of them, but like I said, you may need to kind of make an additional page for yourself. And I kind of give you 4 here, but you can have more paragraphs if you need. And then here's some prompts for your conclusion, and then don't forget to include a works cited page, and that does not count toward the word count or the page count for this assignment. All right, so go ahead and if you need, go back in the worksheet, complete anything that you left out. If not, move on to the next video for this class session.